Real quick before we jump into the video, guys, for the rest of this year I'm going to be on a fundraising campaign to raise a minimum of £1,000 for the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. For more information on the charity and what it does, and for the donation links, please look in the description below. And thank you all for your continued support. Enjoy the show. What's going on, guys? Right, I'm Teacher in the house, and after playing Pokemon for 25 years, there are definitely some things that I really do not like about the Pokemon games that I so know and love, and that means that it's time to talk about them, because I think there are too many instances where we don't actually talk about things that we don't like about Pokemon games. There will be a second part to this. I will do another separate video of things that I love about Pokemon, but I really want to talk about and kind of get my thoughts out on what I really don't like about Pokemon games and what I'm hoping gets fixed at some point in the future. Although, with some of these, I'm not going to hold my hopes up on these actually getting fixed. The first thing that I really can't stand is all the Kanto callbacks. I've said this many a time before, but I really hate it when Pokemon from Generation 1 in general, or just the early games, get new stuff later on in the game, or like heavily prominent in future games when you can easily create new Pokemon. A good example of this being especially with Charizard. Alright, Charizard got 2 Mega Evolutions, the other Kanto starters only got 1. Again, not really a fan of that. Then, of course, in Sword and Shield, Leon, the champion of Galar, his ace was a Charizard. Why? Why couldn't his ace have been Dragapult? Why couldn't his ace have been, like, Corviknight or something? Corviknight's a bit of a bad one for an ace, but, like, at the same time, there are so many good, powerful Pokemon in the Galar region that could have been Leon's ace, but no, it was a Charizard instead. Like, I feel like we go back to Kanto way too many times. I know there's the bunch of Gen 1ers that won't accept anything other than Gen 1 as the best generation or whatever, but I don't care for that, right? The truth of the matter is, you're creating a new region, new Pokemon, new story, like new lore, whatever, but you keep going back to the nostalgia and keep banking on nostalgia trips just to think that people are more likely going to play the game. That's not the case. People are going to play the game whether the old Pokemon are in it or not, right? Obviously, the whole National Dex scandal was one thing, but even then, even with all of that, there was still a bunch of Kanto callbacks with a lot of Kanto Pokemon getting either new forms or just general buffs and stuff like that, which other gens still have not got. Worth pointing out, the Johto as a base stat total generation is still garbage, but most of those Pokemon have not been buffed in some time, so it's pretty frustrating that we get too many Kanto callbacks. I hope that these slow down, but I doubt it. Next up is all the generational gimmicks we've been getting the last few gens. We had Mega Evolution in Gen 6, we had Z-Moves in Gen 7, and of course more recently Dynamax in Sword and Shield. Honestly, look, I don't hate the fact that they're trying to give generational gimmicks, but what I hate about them is how woefully imbalanced they are, or what they're giving these gimmicks to. We talked about the Mega Evolutions and the G-Max for Charizard, for example, and stuff like that. You know, I feel like, honestly, like, I don't mind some of the Pokemon like Lopunny and Audino and Pokemon you would never use normally actually getting Mega Evolutions to make them relevant. I'm cool with that. But I feel like they just give these generational gimmicks to Pokemon that are popular just to try and make people want to use it more. And I feel like if you're gonna bring these gimmicks in, at least make it worth it, right? And I feel like a lot of these gimmicks have been either woefully imbalanced or just not really all that exciting. I kind of don't like the fact that they exist, and if we're gonna see more of these, I want to see them done better. But yeah, right now, really not a huge fan of the gimmicks. I think they're not super great. The next thing that bugs me is one that I actually realized a lot more recently, is in a lot of these Pokemon games, there are a lot of areas or in the games that you can't get to. They are completely closed off. I'm thinking of, in Generation 6, in the Kalos region, there was the whole power plant in there that was meant to be used for, I think, the Volcanion event, but that never even ended up getting released, so it's just an area in the map that you can't access. You can't get to it. There's no physical way to do so. There are ruins like the Sinjar ruins that were in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that you can't actually get to in Heart Gold and Soul Silver because you needed to do the Spear Pillar Arceus event, bring the Arceus and transfer it to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then do the event there. But of course, the Arceus event was not released outside of Japan, so again, the Spear Pillar event in even the Diamond and Pearl games was a closed off area. And the other thing is too, is like, areas can be really small compared to their artwork. I'm thinking even in Sword and Shield, when I look at like Spikemuth, for example, the gym that Piers is in, it's literally a side-scroller game. Like, it's literally, you walk in, and you're just walking in a straight line in a pure side-scroller style game, and then you go and eventually fight Piers at the end. It's like, what? This is meant to be a big, well, not a big city, but it's supposed to be a small town, and it doesn't even feel like one. It's just a simple side-scroller. And I'm not a fan of that. You know, even cities like Lumio City, which was huge in X and Y, didn't really feel all that big. There was a lot of supposedly like gaps between the roads that you could go in, turn off in, but there weren't actually that many of those either. So the maps really don't feel all that good. They don't really feel like they actually fit the artwork that gets released for the map. And you kind of feel like they could do a lot more with that. And I don't want to see all these closed off areas because it's such wasted space, right? Like, if the area is for an event and it's not actually going to be the event, give it some extra use. Like, at least give it something to justify being in the game. The next one I really can't stand is character development. I have really struggled to kind of relate to or bond with characters in all aspects of Pokemon games in the last couple of generations. I don't really like the rivals, I don't really like the evil teams, I don't much care for a lot of the other side characters in the game. The gym leaders can be okay, but not all of them are super great to me. Some of the teams are a little bit boring. You know, and even in the case of the champions, like, Leon isn't bad, but like, his story is not super compelling. Like, it's not great. He's just a guy that essentially is Rose's pawn without even realizing it, right? So it's like, whatever. And then you see like characters like Bede, for example, in Sword and Shield. Like, you see him in the early game a few times, he gets in your way, it starts being really annoying, and then miraculously he becomes the fairy type gym leader, and you don't see him again until you're fighting in the championship tournament to become the champion. Like, what? Like, what is this? Like, I feel like there's so many characters in Pokemon right now that just suck. There's no development to them. You don't really get a lot of good story of them. Like, people think N, for example, is a great character, is really good development. Not really. He's just a boy that was manipulated by his father from a very young age. Which is something that, yes, a lot of us can relate to, but it's not complicated. Right? It's not a complicated story. You know, the same is true. Like, people don't even like Lily, for example. But like, Lily and Gladion, for me, are probably some of the better two side characters in Pokemon games of late. You know, they actually have meaningful character development, which we don't see in a lot of other games. There's Wally and Oras that's pretty well developed as well. But aside from that, the characters just feel so mediocre. And I find it now when I play through the stories of some of the newer Pokemon games that I'm just not compelled to actually learn the lore or actually even bond with the characters. I just don't like a lot of the characters at all. And I feel like that's something that really needs to change, especially in Pokemon games, to make playing through the stories a lot more exciting again. Next thing I can't stand is Dex Filler Pokemon. I've talked about this one before as well on streams, and I'm not just talking about Wobbuffet here, which is just a complete trash Pokemon, but there are so many Pokemon in the game that I'm just like, why are you here? Like, why do you exist? Like, even back to Generation 1, when you think of, like, normal flying type Pokemon, like, in the first routes of the game, you can get a Pidgey. Pidgey's everywhere along the region. Then after you beat Brock, there's a Spearow, and then after you beat Erica, you can get, or even before you beat Erica, you can get Doduo as well. And it's like, before you've even got 3 badges, you've got 3 different normal flying type options. And obviously Dodrio is actually the best one of it in the early gens, for those that didn't know. But like, it's like, why have all 3? I mean, I get it, like, you kind of get the choice of what design style you like, and they all have different stats, different move pools and stuff like that. I get that, but at the same time, it's like, why? Why do you not just have one that makes sense for the actual games themselves? And then there's a lot of Pokemon that they just add to Pokemon games, particularly in Gen 5, I think is probably one of the most egregious examples of this, where you have, like, the Simi-Monkeys, which are just like, why do you exist? Like, you're not necessarily good Pokemon, your designs are pretty mediocre, in fact, they're not popular even in Japan, and it's like, why is this a thing? Like, why do we have so many Pokemon that don't need to be there? I would much rather we stripped out all the Dex Filler, get rid of all the Pokemon that just don't really feel like they have a place, or they're just there for the sake of adding more Pokemon for you to catch, and actually just give us, like, a full, kind of, I guess, national Dex, if you like, of Pokemon that are actually worth using, or worth connecting to. The next thing I really hate about Pokemon is the competitive scene. Now look, Pokemon's a 25-year-old gaming franchise at this point, yet competitive is just so lackluster, especially professionally. Like, the only format that the Pokemon Company and Game Freak seem to like is doubles, which is not what you play through in most instances when you play through the story of a game. You mostly play through singles, so the fact that, you know, the professionals, if you like, don't recognize singles format as a format that should be professional in, is already restricting the player base as it is, and then just making it even worse. And then not to mention the fact that, you know, it can be quite expensive to get into competitive, particularly when you're starting out, you're going to your first regionals or whatever. The prizes are expensive, and only if you've won, like, world championships like Wolf Glick and stuff like that do you actually get stuff paid for you. So it feels super elitist, it feels really lackluster to be a part of, and it just doesn't feel all that, like, open, which is often why you tend to see the same faces, the same names, and the same people up in, like, VGC tournaments, professional tournaments, and stuff like that, constantly, like, winning titles, or at least being there or thereabouts, top cutting tournaments, because the reality is not many other people are playing, so it's an unfortunate situation to be in. The competitive scene is pretty lackluster when it comes to growth, and, you know, if you want to play singles format, you're pretty much restricted to, like, fan-led draft leagues. Which, don't get me wrong, I enjoy Draft League. I love the Draft League format. That's the main basis of a lot of this channel. But it just feels like there's not enough in the competitive scene right now, which is embarrassing for a game that's been around as long as Pokemon has. And speaking of competitive stuff, there are a couple of things about competitive battling that I really despise. The first thing I hate the most is damage rolls. And this actually came about when I was talking to a couple of friends of mine about Temtem recently, because Temtem actually don't have damage rolls. The moves that you actually use in Temtem do X amount of damage based on the Temtem that you're using versus the opponent's using. It still has the type chart and everything like that, but there's no rolls. There's no instance in Temtem where you do 51% of damage on one turn, and then like 48% the next turn, and then for some reason the opposing Temtem lives on 1 HP when they shouldn't have done. But that happens all the time in Pokemon, and I hate that. Why is the Pokemon damage formula so stupidly overcomplicated? It makes it much harder to understand, it makes it much harder to prep, it makes it much harder to play, especially for newer players that are just trying to learn all the competitive format. Why don't we help the competitive scene by streamlining Pokemon battles so we don't have damage rolls, and we just have a set formula that plugs it in, that gives you a set number, and that is the damage that gets done? Why do we have to have ranges when we can just have a set, straightforward, simple number, which makes competitive battling a lot more streamlined? I think it would be much easier, and it would be a lot more fun for players to actually try and get into. The other thing I can't stand about competitive battling is crit. Oh boy, I could go on for ages about crit mechanics and how historically they've always been complete trash, but I just feel like crits don't need to be in the game, right? I'm okay with, like, other things in competitive battling, like the more higher powered moves having a chance to miss. I have no problem with that. That gives you a choice which feels fair, right? Do you go for the higher damage, potentially try to go for a kill, but have a chance to miss? Or do you play it safe and go for the more accurate moves that do slightly less damage and potentially he risk not getting a kill? I'm fine with that. That's fine. But the stupidity of crit can really turn a game on its head. I've had battles even on this channel where I've done Draft League matches where a single crit has either won or lost me the game, right? And that just sucks to me, because it's a very small % chance it happens. It's extra damage that wouldn't normally happen otherwise. Not to mention the rolls as well, the high roll crits versus low roll crits. There's all of that as well to go involved in. I just feel like crit does not need to exist. It's a stupid mechanic that has never been balanced ever in competitive Pokemon. We've come a long way since the woefully imbalanced Gen 1 mechanics where it was based off your base speed, but even still, like, crit just sucks. Take it out of the game. Get rid of crit in general, just literally have battles a lot more streamlined. The next thing I can't stand, and probably the thing I can't stand the most about Pokemon, is the toxic fandom. Now, with a fan base as huge as Pokemon is, it's one of the biggest franchises in the world. It always competes with Mario as to, like, which one's the biggest. But in terms of the fan base, it's so stupid how you can say one thing or have one opinion and just post it on Twitter or share it out on Twitter, and you get a bunch of people berating you because in their eyes your opinion is wrong. And it's so stupid, right? And it's even worse sometimes in the Draft League community as well, where you get a bunch of people that are toxic in a Draft League server. One person leaves without saying a word, and then this group of individuals would just go into their social medias and attack them, right? I had this happen with the EDL, which I left recently due to toxic idiots in there, and put simply, one of their cronies that was toxic literally made an alt Discord account out and spammed a sexually explicit image in my Discord server. All because I left a Draft League that is toxic. It's mind-blowing to me how pathetic some people really are in the Pokemon fanbase. And it's just so stupid. It's like, who cares if you like a game that I don't? Who cares if this gen is your favorite gen and it's not mine? Right? That's one of the most underrated things about Pokemon in so many ways, that, you know, no matter where you go in the world, if you have a Pokemon that someone else doesn't like, right, but you like it, that's cool. Like, that means that there's something out there for everybody, and you should be able to enjoy that. But honestly, the toxicity in a fan base is mind-blowing to me. I think it's bizarre how this fan base has just gotten so big, but it's also gotten incredibly toxic at the same time. And it makes it really scary for a lot of people that make content, right? I've had people abuse me on Twitter in the past because of my Nuzlocke playthroughs, where I let you guys interact with my playthroughs by killing off my Pokemon or whatever for the use of channel point redemptions. Like, what's the point in being so purist about it, right? Just enjoy the content, just have fun, just enjoy the show, take part in the show. You know, it's not like everyone only revives my Pokemon, people re-roll my legendaries all the time, Tiny Tina. But like, it's one of those things where it's like, why does this exist? Why do you have to be so obnoxious? There's no point in being that obnoxious. It's just stupid to me. And the last thing that I really can't stand about Pokemon is the whole idea of we're so accepting of Game Freak and the Pokemon Company's shortcomings when it comes to making Pokemon games, and we just be like, that's just Pokemon, right? I can't stand this whole like thing of that we just accept that Pokemon games are mediocre compared to other JRPGs in the genre, and we literally just don't care. We just be like, that's just Pokemon. And I feel like nowadays we need to be a lot more strict with what we want, right? We need to actually straight up hold Game Freak and any other business that wants to make Pokemon games to account, but actually making better games. Like, you compare Pokemon to other JRPGs right now, like Persona 5, Dragon Quest 11, Nier Automata, Yakuza 0. They all have better music. Well, Gen 8 music is actually pretty good for Pokemon, so I'm not entirely against that. They have better characters, they have better combat, they have better story. Like, they are so much better games than what we have in Pokemon right now. And it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating that Pokemon just has not caught up with the standard. And a lot of the reason for that is Game Freak's budgeting. They deliberately set a fixed cap of how much money they spend on a Pokemon game purely for profit margins, when they could just as easily increase that budget cap, still make a shed load of money because people are still going to buy the games whatever. Sword and Shield sold 20 million copies since its inception, which is literally the highest selling like initial release ever for a Pokemon game. And you kind of got to ask yourself the question of like, why should we accept Game Freak's lack of good development over the last 25 years. Yes, it's come a long way since the whole days of Red and Green, absolutely, but it still hasn't progressed as far as other games have, and I really don't like it. And I think we should stop making excuses and actually start saying, look, we want better games. It's as simple as that. But yeah, those are all the things that I can't stand about Pokemon right now. Let me know if you agree with any of these, if you disagree with them. That's totally cool as well. The next video I'll do, which will be all the things I like about Pokemon, so look forward to that. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Rybome Teacher. Stay safe, stay awesome. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.